Howdy, partners, and welcome to another humdinging edition of the Formula One Fans UK podcast. I am Reece. I'm still Reece. I'm not American and proud to be English. And I am joined today by
Dan, who is ashamed of Reece's behaviour.
And Tim, who has been ashamed of Reece's behaviour for longer than I've known Reece.
I've been ashamed of both of you for a long time, so we're all ashamed of each other.
Not as ashamed as we are with the FIA.
Yeah, and of other
things.
It's
starting early, Tim. Starting with the jabs, mate. Like, have that FIA.
I'm ready. I'm fighting. Let's go.
He's fighting. We're looking for the panorama on Tim here. Like he's gonna properly rip into someone tonight. You can feel it. He's gonna have like a full in-depth research of which we will immediately rebuff like last week.
Well, where was he this week?
8th? No.
Oh, no, shit, he's 6th now, isn't he? Fuck.
No, he wasn't. Was he 6th or was he 4th in the end?
Goodness knows.
Have any more people been disqualified since we last checked?
Only the two.
Well, shall we start off with reviewing the race weekend, I guess? Qualifying, I enjoyed it. Actual qualifying. Don't know if I enjoyed it because I was in the pub.
Qualifying we're talking about.
Friday qualifying. Don't know if I enjoyed it because I was in the pub or because I saw Verstappen spin out and not get pole position.
And get his lap time deleted.
Oh, that was quite funny when blaming Perez for his own lap time getting deleted. I'm sorry.
How dare Perez try and better his position? Like, how dare he? Does he not know who he is?
How dare Max Verstappen not understand what was going to happen when Perez is giving him a tow and he's that much faster than Perez? He must know he's going to catch him up through those final corners.
But Perez wasn't on a fast lap. Perez was starting a fast lap.
Oh, was this one?
He?
Yeah.
Perez was starting, so Perez didn't tow him through that whole sector. It was the fact that Perez had been in the queue to start his final lap of that session and had taken so long that he then created dirty air for Max as he accelerated through the final corner.
Accidentally on purpose.
Yeah, accidentally on purpose.
Accidentally on purpose.
I mean, more to the point, that's on Red Bull then for sending Max out when he was going to catch a train of cars.
Well, controversial, but apparently I haven't seen any timing for it. Perez's lap on that out lap was slower than the minimum lap time from the FIA.
Whose wasn't, to be honest?
So Red Bull had calculated it correctly.
Well, the minimum lap time, yes, but the problem is, and we've all seen this throughout the last 6 or 7 race weekends now consistently, is that the minimum lap time means absolutely nothing because all you have to do is move out the way of one car and you can go as slow as you want.
Well, I think they take it to mini sectors, don't they? They look at would you have reached the minimum lap time if you weren't moving out of the way in all the other sectors.
And he wasn't punished, so I think we can safely assume, correct, he would have.
He was punished because it meant their Lord and Saviour Max Verstappen didn't get on pole, and I'm sure Red Bull will punish him in their own way for that.
What do you mean by not letting him go back to the Barcelona spec chassis?
But to be fair, did it matter? Man still won. He struggled a little bit, but he still won.
Did he struggle, or did he just preserve his tyres in the first stint better than everyone else?
Well, he preserved the underside of his car better than at least 2 other drivers.
That we know of.
Do we know who the other 2 drivers were that were scrutinised?
Yeah, it was Verstappen and Norris.
So it was.
That's why they're saying. That's why there was no, because Leclerc was 6th.
Of course he was. Sorry, he started on pole, so of course he finished 6th.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. From Friday, we shouldn't know Verstappen was going to win just because Charles Leclerc qualified on pole position.
A little statistic there, Reece. You're putting out a little bit of a gem.
Max Verstappen has won more races from Charles Leclerc pole positions than Charles Leclerc has won from Charles Leclerc pole positions.
Yeah, do you want to know the percentage? Leclerc's conversion rate from pole to win is 19%. There's a stat for you.
When you compare that to Charles Leclerc poles to what Verstappen wins are from Charles Leclerc poles, it's probably the remaining 81%.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if there are any others.
Has Carlos has won 2 races from pole.
I'm trying to think who was on pole at Silverstone last year, if it was Charles or not.
No, that was Carlos.
Oh, of course it was first pole, first win. Yeah.
Hamilton might have won a few from. Yeah, Hamilton's won at least one because of the Bahrain race when the Ferrari had the oil burning engine.
Oh yes, yeah. But anyway, qualifying was good itself. we've had 2 weeks in a row, the 1 hour of practice, and I really think it adds some jeopardy, only having that 1 hour of practice before your race qualifying.
I agree. I still feel like it should be an hour and a half practice on a sprint weekend.
Yeah, I could agree with that, but only one session before qualifying, and if they're looking to reduce costs and reduce running and reduce amounts of tyres used across the weekend and across the season, then less practice, more action sessions.
Yep. I mean, it makes sense. The other thing, of course, with having, a sprint, I finally get what the American was on about. Because when we've had all these European sprint races, he's complained. He's complained that sprint qualifying is far too early. He's not going to watch it because it's too early. And, and if he works during the day on a Saturday, he's missing the race. A lot of people don't work weekends, so I can understand that. But the sprint race started at 11 o'clock at night in the UK. For me, I watched it instead of watched it. But I can understand for some people why that is just too late and why they might want to look at what we discussed. If anyone from the FIA ever listens to this podcast, which is, just condensing that gap between sprint qualifying and sprint race.
I think because it's regional, it obviously throws up different issues, doesn't it? On having it might be like super late out there, like super late here, like super early there, super early here. But I think they definitely need to look at like how it's going to affect everybody in their core main audiences to make it like more accessible to everybody else. And if you are going to do it at a stupid time, you should make it free on their like YouTube channel, the Formula One YouTube channel or stuff like that, like so it can be watched back the next day. Do you know what I mean? To make it like more accessible to everybody.
I like that idea, making the sprint races more accessible to people, especially while it's in this. I guess it is. I know is it the third season we've had them or the second season?
It's
second
season. I think it's
third season.
I think it's second, isn't it?
I think it's the second season. All I know is there are more. It's the first season of this format.
Yeah, but it's I think it's the third season overall. I'm sure it's 2021 was the first season with them.
I think so too.
Because I think that like having it replayed on YouTube like the day after, or say like 6 hours or something after, so like whoever's watched it has watched it, whoever hasn't watched it, you can catch up with it. It might give him that drive to survive kind of feel, because it's only an hour of the sprint race. You don't need to give him all the qualifying before, none of that stuff, like just straight in on the sprint race. It might pull people in, but like, oh, like what's the rest of it about? But just a thought,
Yeah, I think that I genuinely think that's a really good idea. Quite rare on this podcast.
We have lots of good ideas, Tim. It's just you're usually up a hill and can't hear them.
Tim just talks to the sheep. He converses with the animal life to get all his rants out.
I do indeed, because I've got no defence here. I'm all for late Sunday night races because it means I can't be walking up mountains. But yeah, in terms of the what were we going? We were going on the qualifying for the Grand Prix. Are we going back there?
Well, we've done qualifying for the Grand Prix, qualifying for the race,
qualifying for the sprint then.
Oh, for the sprint race,
right, yeah. So I've got no defence for that. But qualifying for. So should we move on to the next session? Qualifying for the sprint race.
Yep, we can talk about qualifying for the sprint race. I mean, there wasn't really much to talk about. It was what we expected qualifying to be. If Verstappen hadn't spun and had his lap time deleted.
Yeah, Verstappen led that and then led the sprint race, didn't he? There really wasn't that much to talk about in the sprint race at all. We're all trying to remember the sprint race now, aren't we? Who even finished second? I couldn't tell you.
Who finished second in the sprint race?
I watched it, but I was slightly delirious at the time. But from what I remember, it was one of those clear-cut, you knew what was going to happen kind of deals, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was all sorted. The gaps were established very early on in the race, and not much happened after that.
Verstappen's aggressive defence into turn one, sort of saw him off, and he was fine from then on. I mean, the sprint was probably the worst sprint of the season, but when you think about it, Verstappen made a comment saying, "Well, what's the point? Because you're just going to get the same result tomorrow." And to be honest, he wasn't far off, because the top four in the sprint were Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris. The top fought on track in the Grand Prix before the disqualifications was Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris, Sainz. So there you go, 3 of the same 4 drivers, and the other one being from the same constructor.
Yes, but there was a lot more behind it than just that, like those top 4 finishing. Like there was a good run from Perez, like the watching the gap come down between Max and Lewis was good. I don't know what
Talking about the Grand Prix here, I assume.
Yeah, the Grand Prix, yeah, but I don't know what Leclerc thought he was on about with. We need to talk about it after the race. Mate, you were 4 seconds slower than your teammate.
Well, I think the issue being with that was they made the move to swap Sainz and Leclerc, and Norris was always out of reach. But this is the thing. Perez got Leclerc. Would Perez have got Sainz if he was defending for Leclerc? Well, I think Sainz defended a lot better than Leclerc did all race, because Leclerc's defence, in my opinion, was a shambles all race. He barely tried to defend from Norris and Hamilton. The only person he actually tried to defend from was Verstappen, which made no sense because Verstappen was always going to go by him, whether it took him an extra lap or not.
Was Leclerc not on? Did not Leclerc one stop though? Leclerc one stopped in the Grand Prix. That's why.
No, he 2 stopped, I think.
No, he one stopped in the actual Grand Prix. He one stopped, which is why he wasn't defending it, because he said it was preservation of tyre life. It was his race, but his race was not ruining his tyres in a battle.
I thought everybody got off the.
Yeah, I think everyone 2 stopped
because it was shit. I think the last one held out was Ricciardo, wasn't he? Like he pitted really late. I think he was one of the last ones on it.
The last person to pit was our fastest lap point holder from this weekend, Yuki Tsunoda.
Yes, he was actually.
We'll get onto his drive because great weekend for him. But yeah, maybe he didn't one stop, but he was.
No, I'm pretty sure everyone 2 stopped. You see. Because I'm sure there was a radio message from Leclerc at one point screaming in just anguish at how his team had left him for dead with terrible strategy again.
Charles Leclerc was the only finisher of the race to have only stopped once,
and was completely hung out to dry by the fact that he was put on a 1-stop strategy.
I apologise to him.
Sorry, I just thought I'd look it up, but he was. When he got passed by the people that he was being passed by, he was racing them, but he wasn't racing them in that moment. It was all about the long game for him.
But 2 things, Tim, I'm going to say here. 1, didn't really work anyway because he got disqualified. 2, how can you call 1st to 6th a success?
It wasn't a success. I never said it was a success. I was giving you a reason that he didn't defend when he was passed between stop 1 and stop 2 for the others. Because he knew they all had to stop again, but he still ended up behind them, which shows how bad a strategy it was. But that's the reason he didn't defend it.
Yeah, but I think they all kind of figured out midway through that 1-stop strategy was going to be a bit shit. Obviously not Ferrari, because Ferrari are like top strategists of the game.
Especially with Ferrari's tyre wear as well. Ferrari's tyre wear is the worst tyre wear of those top 4 teams, probably most consistently.
Yeah, but I'm not being funny. After like 20-something laps, Stevie Wonder could have saw that the 1-stop strategy was bad. Yet people that have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, pounds, euros, whatever money they have in Italy, still can't figure it out.
Luigi's.
They're paid in dominoes.
And then if you get to 100 dominoes, it's a
good strategy.
A bit of Pizza Express, maybe. I don't know.
Right. Let's move on because we always rip on Ferrari, and it's very low hanging fruit, but still.
There's another team who thought about a 1-stop, and it cost them potentially a win on track.
Here's the problem, because I'm not going to go on about the 1-stop because there were lots of things that went wrong in Hamilton's race, including the fact that he had excessive wear on the inside of his car, which led to him getting disqualified. You can go, oh yeah, he locked up, he lost 3 seconds there, and that's where he could have caught Norris 2 laps earlier, which probably would have seen him catch Verstappen. But there are 2 big issues that really bug me, because we all like Hamilton, we all like the British drivers here in this podcast, but his team, we cut Mercedes too much slack for all their success that they've had in the past. if Mercedes were Italian, we'd be abusing them right now. We'd abuse them like we'd abused Ferrari. Their strategy calls have been slow and indecisive all season long, and the pit stops are just inexcusable. Hamilton 3.4 and 3.6 yesterday. You look at every team's average across the season. This takes away the worst pit stop from this average. This does, because of course you get the outlier. Average pit stops this season: Red Bull 2.6, McLaren 2.8, Ferrari is a 2.9, Mercedes average pit stop this season is a 3.1 second stop. On average, they lose half a second in every pit stop to Red Bull across the season. Drew Barrymore has been proven that she can do a better job.
I don't know. I saw the video. It was very slow.
She got that tyre off absolutely fine, in my opinion, compared to when I was watching Hamilton's front right.
You said about the indecisiveness of the strategy. Do you think that the strategy team at Mercedes are complacent or got complacent when they were winning? Because whatever
100%.
strategy they did, they would win for that 5-6 years in the 20 teams.
100%. I think they're completely complacent. I feel like they think because they're Mercedes and they've got themselves out of holes before and they've come back and they've won races, etc., across the season when they shouldn't have won races. They've always been able to find a way, apart from this season because they haven't won a race yet. We're coming up to Brazil. We know how good they are in Brazil. It's complacency. You're 100% right, Tim. It's not good enough from one of the best teams in Formula One, one of these teams that's challenging at the front. We take the mick out of Ferrari constantly. Why aren't we doing the same to Mercedes? I know we don't really get too much aggro on the radio from the drivers, but is that it?
But I think we have criticised them before, maybe not as much with the strategy calls and stuff like that. Like we did at the start of the season and stuff where we really called them for being so far behind, like shit and all that sort of stuff. And I think we have called them on doing shit strategy calls in the past. But yeah, I think you're right. We haven't called them out nearly as much as what we've called out Ferrari for it. But one thing I will say about Mercedes is it does look like that car is getting better. Whether it's getting better or Red Bull are just okay, let's just turn the car down now because we've won everything. There's no need to fuck shit up. But it generally, to me, looks like it is getting better. As a Mercedes fan, I'm then worried that the works car is getting outdriven by someone that we supply engines to. So I'm not really that confident about it.
Yeah, McLaren are trouncing them. They're a works team, Mercedes. McLaren are a customer team. No matter what way you look at it, they are being absolutely trounced by McLaren.
And Mercedes is second in the constructors and McLaren
on recent form, Tim. On recent form,
Lando is trouncing them. I know Oscar got the sprint win the other week.
No, Piastri's been exceptional too. I mean, he's had one bad weekend. Well, let's face it, the retirement was not his fault this week.
But if you take away, I know it was Mercedes' fault, but the double retirement last week, I would have said that Russell could have finished second in Qatar if he hadn't been crashed into at the start. Think about his recovery drive and the pace he showed. I don't think in terms of the car they have, they're being trounced. I now think it is a case of strategy and maybe even
that is my point, to be honest. No, I think Lewis Hamilton the last since Singapore, Singapore, Japan, I thought he was all right, but they weren't great. I mean, it's really fluctuating because I think the races that we've seen, this race and Singapore, have been probably Lewis Hamilton's best two races, along with Brazil last year. So that they've been his best three races since that controversial loss of the title. I know, man. I'm just getting so frustrated by the worst thing is that there's always excuses being made for Mercedes by the pit crew, by the commentary team on Sky, and it really is driving me nuts because I'm watching them they're going, oh, should they have pulled Hamilton in 2 laps earlier? Should they have done that? Well, they should have pulled him in 2 laps earlier. But more to the point, you're constantly covering up for slow stop after slow stop after slow stop. I mean, it's just, I just can't understand it. I mean, even when Williams were trash at the back of the grid, they could still put together a good pit stop.
Yeah, so the Williams argument is that Williams had to have perfect pit stops because of their car to have a chance of getting anything. And maybe that meant that they knew that pit stops were more important to them. But as I said earlier, it is a complacency thing, and it's almost a hangover of when they were successful and when they didn't have to care as much about strategy, about pit stops. And yeah, it's something that if the cars do get closer together across the next year or two, because who knows what's going to happen in 2026 with the new rule set. But say we come to 2025 and everything is as close as it was in 2021, but you've got 3 or 4 teams there, those half a second pit stops that are going to cost you 3rd place or 4th place on a race weekend will cost you a podium. They could cost you race wins, they could cost you titles, they could cost you sponsorship and advertising revenue, and it's something that they're really going to have to work on across the coming months, and especially going into the new season.
Yeah, man, it's just I think it's just frustrating because as someone who I've always backed Mercedes since they took Hamilton on, because you back the British drivers, and they took George Russell on, and you back him because of that. They're not my team. McLaren's my favourite team. If Sainz was still in McLaren, I'd be still on cloud 9. But he's not. He's gone to Ferrari. He's won some races since he's been there, so I can't complain too much. But from the competition point of view, that's where it really hurts me, because you've got nothing happening. Red Bull win again, and who's going to challenge them? Well, you look at McLaren, you go, okay, maybe McLaren, but they always just seem like they're cursed and they're never going to win a race with Lando Norris. It's getting to that point now.
They are the team that is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but every time Red Bull consistently takes 2 steps forwards and doesn't lose anything.
That's a big thing. Red Bull are so consistent, and if you're going to be a well-oiled machine that can come back and beat someone, you look at Mercedes, because Mercedes did it. They were so out of that title fight in 2021. They were completely, when you went into Bahrain and they changed the regulations to hurt the high rate cars like Mercedes and Aston Martin, they fought so hard to overcome that. When Red Bull outdeveloped them and you came back after the summer and you thought, there's some real trouble here, like Red Bull could just walk this, they fought and they got inside. I mean, you saw Verstappen, he was cracking under the pressure. No matter what you say about him win the title, he was cracking under the pressure. He was brake checking Hamilton and everything. And Mercedes has shown they can come back. It feels like they've had one thing go wrong, and and that's distracted from everything else.
Yeah, I do think maybe, and we've seen it working with Williams this year. Are they struggling to replace James Vowles potentially?
I think so.
In his role, is it something that they need? Do they need to look at a poach from another team who is getting the strategy right, or do they need to look to another brand of Mercedes Motorsport to see if they can get a strategist from somewhere?
Well, I mean,
so maybe someone to plug the gap, but I think it almost has to be someone external.
I'm pretty sure, did they not make the move halfway through the season to bring back James Allison into a more trackside role?
A more trackside role, but he's still on the technical side, isn't he? I didn't think
still I think he was moved to technical director, yeah. And in my opinion, that's worked because the car has got better. But the strategic side, I think you're completely right. I think they have failed to replace James Vowles, and they should absolutely be looking outside of their own organisation to find someone. I mean, you look at what Ferrari did when they did improve their strategy. They took the girl from Haas.
Yeah.
Look around. Look at someone who's lower down, who's doing a good job, and take them.
Yeah, and speaking of the females in the strategy department, Hannah Schmidt got it spot on again yesterday. There were some nervous minutes for her, but the way round that they put the tyres of going medium hard rather than the other way around arguably won Max the race at the end.
Yeah,
because he just had enough with those struggling brakes. If he's on medium tyres that are wearing under those brakes, does he slide off the track a bit more? Does he have to brake a bit harder if he's getting better traction out of the corners and going down the straight? Like, the wear on the car, he knew he was on the right tyres at the right time again to get himself over the line.
Yeah, I think she does a fantastic job.
We haven't really mentioned her, I don't think, much on the podcast.
No, we haven't, and we should do.
Because she doesn't do anything wrong. She doesn't cause us the thing, and she's brilliant.
I think that's the thing when you are the media. I mean, even though we're not professional, we're still the media in a sense. The media focuses on the bad things, so which is why I'm drabbing on about how frustrated I am with Mercedes this season. It's because when someone does something well, it doesn't really sell as well. But yeah, you know what? Well, and to be honest, yeah, I'm going to say this. Well done, F1 Academy, because that was it was entertaining this weekend. Watching it, I was entertained.
That was a quick jump. Congratulations to Marta Garcia.
Yeah, congratulations to Marta Garcia. And well done F1 Academy, because I was thoroughly entertained this weekend watching those races. I thought it was brilliant.
It was very entertaining. I had a friend staying with me this weekend. She's not really watched much F1 before, and she was more entertained by the F1 Academy than we were by the sprint race, which showed how entertaining a series it was. And the W series was that as well for a few races. And well done to Marta Garcia, especially becoming the first W series champion. And I really, really hope that even an F3 team, give her a decent ride. This is what you're designed to do now. The idea of this F1 Academy with sponsorship from the 10 F1 teams, if it's going to be from next season, and a lot of them are already there already. The interest from the main drivers, you had Lewis Hamilton, Esteban Ocon, George Russell, all watching on from the pit wall. I'm sure there were one. I think Valtteri Bottas was down there.
Yeah, the only one who actually went over to see them was Lewis Hamilton. They made some comments about that, saying that Lewis gets what it's like to be a minority in Formula One. So the other drivers need to jump in support. But going back to what I was saying, it's actually been a really strong week for women in motorsport. Of course, Jamie Chadwick has re-signed for another season of NXT over in America.
And you had Jessica Hawkins as well driving. I know it was a few weeks ago now. She drove a 2021 Aston Martin around Hungary.
Bianca Bustamante has joined the McLaren driver development program.
Yeah, it's really good to see, and I hope that the sponsorship of the F1 teams, and actually, I just hope there is now a pathway, maybe even if it's out of F1 Academy and into European Formula 4, regional Formula 4, regional Formula 3, and then eventually obviously up to F3 and F2 that travel with the F1 circus for most of the year. I just hope that this redevelopment of the system will give them the groundwork, because they do need to integrate. I don't think women's series on a par with an F2 is the way to go as proof of the W series.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, you look at of course, one other thing I forgot to talk about, Jessica Edgar, of course, won the final race of the was it the final race of the season? She won. Got her first victory, and it's congratulations to her. It's been fantastic. But when you look at it, next season, F1 Academy starts in Saudi Arabia. It's huge. It's because the thing is that also these women are going to be role models.
Yeah, they'll be racing on the same day as the Formula One race, because both races are going to be on the Saturday. Because Saudi Arabia Grand Prix is on the Saturday night. Yeah,
because of Ramadan, and it's become a lot more inclusive, Formula One and motorsport, in terms of those involved in the teams and in the race weekend on track. So long may that continue. But
was Saudi the race that the W Series didn't make it to in 2021, or was that another circuit? I'm sure it was a Middle Eastern race that it folded before, so that'll almost be like the completion of the circle if it is. Because it was at the end of the season that they fell apart in 2021, wasn't it? They didn't complete their season.
Well, they ran out of funding and
money. Yeah.
But I think that's where it's good that it's more stable now.
Can we mention the Aston Martin's race? Unbelievable recovery drives.
I mean, it's a lot easier to race when you completely change your car setup, specifically for the race, based on what you've learned in the last 3 sessions. So I wouldn't say unbelievable recovery drive. I'd say expected recovery drive from the team that is what, third in the championship, fourth in the championship.
Yeah. So given their recent results, a double points finish. It wasn't a
double points finish because Alonso retired.
Oh, it was. Alonso retired now, but all right then. Let's go with Lance Stroll, especially given recent performances and recent race weekends. After the penalty, it is pit lane to 7th. After the penalties for Hamilton and Leclerc, it was pit lane to 9th. It's now pit lane to 7th. A remarkable recovery, given he's been so far off the pace and so far out of the game for the last few races, regardless of your car setup.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd count up the car setup. I'd also counter it with the fact that he was slower than Alonso, who went back to driving the old spec Aston Martin.
He was slower than Alonso, who went back to driving the old spec Aston Martin, but Alonso went to the old spec Aston Martin because he said he couldn't drive the new spec. Stroll was within a few seconds, a second or two of Alonso before Alonso retired. He was right on his tail way through the field, which he hasn't been for a long, long time.
I don't know. It felt almost irrelevant because going back to what my intro was, I got so excited and so ashamed by my accent. I forgot to announce that Logan Sargent has scored points in a Formula One race.
Yeah, he has done. We'll give him a round of applause. Well done, Logan.
He finally got there. He got there before Nick De Vries, except for he didn't get there before Nick De Vries because Nick De Vries did it in a Williams before him.
Genuinely, he was one place behind Albon. Throughout the race, his pace was good. He actually closed the gap to Albon in the final stint when they were both on the hard tyres. Brilliant for Logan. Well done, Logan. It was really telling what they said to him on the in-lap, because I was watching a video today where it was F1 put out a video with all of the radios as they crossed the finish line. And James Vowles came on the radio. Second time we've mentioned him in this podcast. And he said, that is exactly what we want from you. And this was when he'd finished 12th. He said, you're right behind Alex. You struggled at the start of the weekend. You listened to what we said and you've learned from it and you've got faster and faster as the weekend and then the race has gone on. And to hear that kind of constructive compliments from your team boss and from your race engineer, and even at finishing 12th, they were all happy with the job that he'd done. Which, again, I know he had the retirement in Qatar, but going back to Singapore and Suzuka, he was so far off the pace that they were just saying, right, we'll review it when you get there, when you get back to us.
I'm going to say, I will never have any problems with him not finishing that race in Qatar.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I don't think anybody. On reflection, he was the bravest man in the room to do that. It wasn't the drivers who stayed out, it was him for doing that. But yeah, he was. It's really, really positive for him, and hopefully it gives him some confidence going into the last set of races.
But we're going to have to get back on to the real talking point of the race. But before we do, we all know the elephant in the room was that Hamilton and Leclerc were later disqualified from the race after their cars were inspected by the scrutineers. The other two cars inspected, or the four random ones, were Verstappen and Norris. Knock-on effects of this, one being it turned what was a bad weekend for Alfa Romeo and Haas into a terrible weekend for Alfa Romeo and Haas, because the extra 3 points for Williams put 10 points ahead of Alfa Romeo in the Constructors' Championship, and the bonus 2 points that bonus 3 points Tsunoda got have put AlphaTauri just 2 points behind Haas.
Yeah.
That's the implication of millions. And this brings me on to this next point. The two cars being disqualified could have huge financial implications on Alfa Romeo and Haas going into next season. So we're talking millions here. So when we're talking millions, you have to wonder, why can't the FIA stretch a little bit further to hire the people required to scrutinize the entire grid? Because if you are inspecting 4 random cars and 50% of those cars are falling foul of a very basic, very black and white regulation.
Can we point out as well, safety regulation?
Safety regulation as well, yeah. How can you then go, yeah, it's only those two. I won't check the rest, especially with something like, the underfloor plank. It's so obvious. It's so easy to check. It's a case of get a tape measure out. All right, that's the size of it. Okay, that's too small. Okay, disqualified. Why can you not do that with all cars that take part? How much more money, time, and effort does it really take to check a few basic fundamentals? And if you want to take 4 random cars for extreme scrutineering, I get that. But the basics, the things that center around safety, check every car for it.
I fully agree. You have, so I'm going to use we were in American example, NASCAR will have a very basic checklist that every car will have to pass after the race. And if they don't pass them, they're disqualified. And then they will pick usually a few cars, maybe 2 or 3 cars from 2 or 3 different teams, or one from each manufacturer in NASCAR as it is. And they would then take those cars and break them down a lot more. So, which for any parts. And then if you fall foul of that, your teammates can be scrutineered in the next race as one of the ones that get broken down.
Yeah, I mean, of course, everyone has its basic checklist of check the weight, check this, check that. But basic things around safety, being that the plank, it should be so easy to check. I mean, check the DRS slot on every car because that should open so far. The things that are really quick and easy to check on every car.
Maybe we need to start issuing some of these £1 million fines to be able to afford all your scrutineering, Reece.
That's ridiculous as well. I mean, Kevin Magnussen said it perfectly. Yeah, you can give this fine to some drivers, and they will pay it off and not be happy about it. You make me pay this fine, I will disappear off the face of the earth.
Yeah, we're not getting into that tonight because we do need to wrap this up.
We do need to wrap this up. I'm sure we'll be able to talk about it at another point. We're going down to Mexico, so if we're talking about people who have got a lot of money to spare to pay off their driver's fines, the backer of Sergio Perez could easily pay £1 million fine.
Can he pay him to keep him in a seat though? That's the question.
That's the big question. Does the home crowd? We'll wrap this up with this question. Does the home crowd give Sergio Perez the energy he needs to finally bounce back and show some form?
I hope so, for his sake.
Somebody's got to give it to him, isn't they?
Yeah, if he can't do it there, then where can he do it?
Yeah, just give him the Barcelona spec car.
Well, no, that might be worse if it's not finished.
Or if he wants it, give him it, It's his home race. But yeah, I don't know. I'm hopeful for Perez. I just feel like the home crowd could lift him. I feel like that's what he needs because everywhere he's been, it feels like he's become almost a meme.
If Verstappen hadn't won that race yesterday with a wounded car, we'd be asking where was his teammate in the car that wasn't broken. And it came very close to on track, at least, Verstappen not winning that race, and he was nowhere on track.
Yeah, I Perez had to fight back from further down, but the result of that is another poor qualifying. So, yeah. But yeah, whether you back Perez to bounce back or not, surely you have to be a fan of legendary tracks, staying in Formula One, like Spa, of course, being extended. And if you like Spa a lot, why not celebrate Spa with some 3D printed track wall art from our podcast sponsor, Apex Tracks. For all your 3D printed track wall art needs, head to apextracks.com. That's apextraxs.com.
Well done, Reece. Well done.
Fucked up the intro, but not the actual sponsorship. So there we go. Also got some news in there because I'm good. Anyway,
news.
Anyway, we hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast. Check out the link in the bio if you want to hear more. I've updated the link so it's actually correct because there's been a typo in it, which has been hilarious that we've not noticed for ages. So yeah, if you've been trying to click on the link and it's not worked, try again now because it should on this podcast, and I'm sure Tim will be able to go back and fix everything. And if it hasn't gone back and fixed everything, it's all Tim's fault and no one else's, we promise.
So definitely not my fault. I didn't even know. Like, It's definitely it's all Tim. Nothing to do with me.
Entirely Tim's fault. But until next time, thank you very much for listening, everyone. Until then, cheerio, guys.
Bye.
See you later, guys.